In mid-February this month, 2026, China's annual Spring Festival Gala, Chunwan, the most watched TV programme on Earth, transformed into a high-stakes tech demo. A troupe of humanoid robots, primarily led by Unitree Robotics G1 and H2 models, performed a choreographed martial arts routine that has since gone viral. Unlike the stiff, singular movements of previous years, these robots executed drunken fist techniques, nunchuck routines, and 3-meter aerial flips with fluid, human-like agility. This spectacle wasn't just for entertainment, it was a deliberate showcase of China's embodied AI progress, utilising real-time motion control algorithms to maintain balance during rapid off-centre spins and weapons handling. You know, we've been fascinated by the Olympics and watching those phenomenal ice skaters, you know, doing stuff for like 4 minutes on ice, which is just extraordinary, and making no mistakes. You know, like one of them out of 4 made one mistake. I've been on ice, you know, once and just went backwards and didn't know why I was going.
The one mistake is like a career ending.
It was.
Like huge
Floods
of tears. Just, and like, well, you know, what would you expect from one mistake in figure skating?
Emily, what we're talking about here, your father, Professor O'Connor, was an inventor of a world engineering product in
artificial need replacement.
And orthopaedic engineering. An Oxford professor. Well, he used to talk about not the sort of what they call a sort of domain specific, knowing what you're designing. You know, it's sort of where you know what you're programming for, to one where you don't. There's got to be endless variety. Tell us a bit about that.
He did a lot of work in knee replacement and also in gait analysis. So actually studying the way people walk and move, and watching those robots reminded me of that work. And I remember him talking. I think, Lucy, you've got a memory about him talking about the knee. I remember him talking about the difference in what you do with your hand when you're carrying an uncooked egg. Okay, so imagine carrying an uncooked egg, so you have to hold it tight enough not to drop it, but not too tight because you'll break the shell. And that's something very sophisticated that's going on between your brain and the hand, and you don't even think about it.
What they call is real-time reactive. Yeah. So you've actually got a mechanical function, your hands and pressure, but your brain is working at the same time.
Yes, and you're not even aware of it. And then imagine that in the other hand you're actually carrying a fluffy chick that's wriggling, right? So you've got to not apply too much pressure, but you've got to stop it escaping. And these are two things that a human being can do simultaneously. You could carry that egg, you could carry that fluffy chick, but actually getting a humanoid robot to do that. I remember Tim Berners-Lee saying at this at an event, he's saying, you know, people, they talk about AI and immediately get into robot wars. And then roboticists are like, do you know how hard it is to get a robot to even walk? I was watching that programme and I actually had this bizarre kind of like inception moment where I was asking an AI chatbot, is this real or is this AI enhanced? Because it doesn't seem even real that this could be so lifelike and also so different to a year ago. A year ago it was impressive but stiff. This year it's like, what? And what am I watching? They're dancing.
Alice, they were kind of dancing. They also had swords. And Alice, what you saw was this, they put kids in and the kids were smiling away as though they were ice skate dancers and everyone's happy. But you got these humanoid robots with swords. So they wanted to put this danger next to vulnerability in the same stage space. And obviously the message that they're transmitting is you can trust these robots even with children around.
Yeah. And with swords. Isn't that powerful? I mean, to me as a speech therapist, like I did some placements and some work with neuro rehab patients, so people who've had a brain injury or a stroke, and they're learning skills again, like talking or eating and drinking, which is what we would get involved in, but also movement. And, you know, I think even less than a year ago, there was the Robot Olympics. And I have to say, watching it, it was very like being in a neuro rehab ward in a hospital, because it's like the robots are running their race, and that's really nice. And on the side are lots of humans kind of like on standby, and then one of the robots will be running, and then it just kind of starts drifting off, and the humans are like, what? And try and catch it. Because it's like, yeah, to walk, such a skill. To talk, it's like you need to have postural stability of all the major muscles in your body for the fine muscles to actually be able to work. Because if you're trying to talk and you're all unstable, it's a lot harder, and it's a lot like there's so much detail. There's a reason that physiotherapy degrees are 4 years long. It's like there is so much theory and mechanics and, you know, that
so it's the mess of life, isn't
Yeah.
it? You're looking at the mess of life, and we had this with San Francisco cars as well, and I don't mean to drift, but it is this sort of reactive technology is so much harder than predetermined choreographed technology.
Yeah, can you take, Luce, could you just tell us a little bit more about that? Because that was your reaction as a technologist watching this display, is the difference between, is it predetermined, do this movement,
Yes.
and the robot learning from
Or making
your
its own
gestures.
decisions.
Can you just tell us a bit about the difference between those
We're
two
going
things?
we're going to talk in a bit about robot hoovers, and I don't want to jump into that, but they basically make a map of your home, and you can program this. It's like programming endless variables in a chess game. When you've got a domain-specific environment, that's fantastic for computers. Where it's a real difficulty is the mess of life. And, you know, you've got then what you need is a reactive system that really is trained, and that's where you need AI to understand and make its own determinations. San Francisco cars, electronic cars, got stuck in a fire situation with fire engines, and the car wouldn't move out of the way because it just hadn't learned to deal with emergency situations. It has a real struggle with small animals like deer and dogs crossing the road suddenly. It just doesn't know how to handle that. The Oxford knee, the actual knee joint itself is not a hinge. The knee has lots of flexibility in all directions, but it only chooses to use that where it's really necessary. And you saw that in ice skating yesterday, where there's suddenly a bend or a flip, and you're watching people making those reactive decisions all the time. I think you probably are getting to the age where you can kind of see a robot doing a pre-mapped ice skating routine. I think we're nearly there, but it'd be quite boring because it's sort of perfect. But we are drifting into this sort of grand challenge in robotics, which is sort of robotics is, you know, still locomotion, walking or flipping, or we're moving towards that sort of fine motor dexterity, that tactile
again,
sensors.
it really brings me back to like neuro rehab of, so like let's say someone's had a stroke and they've lost the ability to say k. So you teach them to say k in their hospital bed, and they're really good at saying k, but then they have to say walk, which has got a k at the end. And then they've got to say a massive sentence with a k in. And then they've got to be able to be in a busy pub and say k when there's lots of noises and people aren't going to be as patient with them. So it's like, it's sort of that scalability of, and you can't prepare someone for every single situation where they're going to have to say k, but you can try and train them to be able to say k in whatever life may throw at them.
In 2001 Space Odyssey, we see, and in Star Wars, robots as servants. And there are two aspects to this, aren't there? There's something that is deeply compelling. Why do I want a Roomba sweeping my floor? Why do I want a perfect robot dressed in whatever making coffee for me and boiling an egg in the morning without question, even if I'm in a bad mood, without telling me off. What is compelling about that sort of master-slave sort of thing? And then, Emily, the other side of that is what I call the invisible benefits. So you've got the visible benefits, which is slave who just does all the boring things in your life and smiles all the time and doesn't complain, versus what we call data sovereignty. China's planning to ship 20,000 of these units this year, and they're entering international homes and factories and doing, mapping, spatial maps and learning and potentially uploading this intel from deep within our worlds.
Yes, and science fiction for generations has told us how this ends, right? And we're, it doesn't usually end well.
Doesn't the sky go white?
Lucian, you and I were at the Munich Cybersecurity Conference last week, and we heard Sean Cairncross, a Trump official, in his opening remarks, talking about the clean stack and the China stack. And I'm like, what is
That's
he
it,
talking?
one or the other.
One or the other. So the clean stack means the US companies, and which is free from surveillance and privacy respecting. And then there's the China stack, which he placed in opposition to this. And I think one of the things that is going on that I'm really interested in is China is emerging and has emerged as a tech superpower. It is pouring resources into innovation and is jumping ahead of the market. So the US, which has always been the innovative superpower in technology, is now coming out with very alarmist and defensive posture. And it reminds me of, work we did maybe 7 or 8 years ago on new IP, where we were saying, look out, China is actually designing a different internet that would fragment the internet. And everyone's like, oh, that would be awful. Now you've got the US administration seeming to advocate for a bifurcation in technology. Yet, what will happen? Mess. These cool robots, they're cool. Who wouldn't want one if you had the money? They're going to be shipped all over the world, and they are going to be they're going to be collecting a lot of data as they learn, aren't they, about our everyday lives, our intimate secrets, our homes, and everything that we treasure.
And another subject, really, do we care?